The United States is very familiar with disagreements around the question of paying taxes. Starting back with the Stamp Act in 1765 and then the Boston Tea Party, taxes were the issue that pushed the 13 colonies to call for independence from Britain. Those kinds of tax disputes weren't anything new. They were also heard back in early first century Palestine. The Jewish people paying taxes to Rome stirred the same kind of rebellion as the colonists paying taxes to Britain. Tax reform is a perennial political issue. Here in Illinois, we are voting this year on something that's been called the Fair Tax Amendment to the Constitution. Now, of course, those who would have to pay more taxes don't consider it very fair. Perhaps the proponents could have tried calling it the Just Tax Amendment. We can always ask Mike Bruce about that during our adult formation time this morning. In our gospel lesson for today, the Pharisees were trying to use the contentious issue of taxes to entrap Jesus. And they joined forces with their political opponents, the Herodians. The Pharisees and the Herodians were opposing political parties, just like the Republicans and the Democrats. They clashed bitterly on most issues, but they agreed on one thing, that Jesus was a threat. The Herodians were political supporters of Herod, who had been appointed as king of Judea by Rome. And they profited as members of Herod's court. If Jesus said that he opposed paying taxes to Caesar, he could then be charged with sedition, with inciting rebellion against Rome. New Testament scholar N.T. Wright reminds us that the roads leading into Jerusalem were lined with crosses where the bodies of those who opposed Rome were left hanging as public reminders of the consequences of resistance and rebellion. The Pharisees, on the other hand, opposed Roman rule, and they wanted to discredit Jesus. The Jews were oppressed by Roman taxes. If Jesus replied that they should pay those taxes to Caesar, he would be seen as a Roman sympathizer and would alienate his Jewish followers. So the Pharisees and the Herodians joined forces, and they felt they had laid the perfect trap for Jesus. First, by flattering him, and then luring him into an either-or vote. But Jesus didn't take the bait. As followers of Jesus, what is our relationship to government, to empire? The separation of church and state is written into our Constitution. We saw the relationship of her faith to her judicial duties dominate the hearings this week of Supreme Court nominee Amy Coney Barrett. Here at St. Simon's, our identity statement says that we celebrate God's love for all. All must even mean politicians, regardless of political affiliation, Republicans and Democrats alike. And our identity statement also says that we embody Christ's love in the world. The world we live in, the place to embody Christ for us, is a world of empire. Some would see our faith as a matter of our own individual spirituality. They would emphasize that the way to be faithful is to deepen our inner sense of union with the divine. Others see faith as more corporate. They see the role of the church as modeling and embodying an alternative kind of community, one that lives by values that are in contrast to those of empire. Both of those perspectives are important, but faith is about more than our inner spiritual life. And as much as faith is about community, it doesn't allow us to separate ourselves as a community of faith from the needs of the world, from the suffering and injustice that result from the oppressive systems of privilege and domination of empire all around us. Rather, our faith calls us to go into the world, to engage and embody God's kingdom. It has been suggested that our political parties actually have much more in common than that on which they differ, because at their root, they are both deeply invested in maintaining empire. They just have different strategies. To be honest, we all play our own parts in maintaining empire. All of us who benefit from empire and the way things are have an interest in keeping them that way. And so the Pharisees and Herodians' question is also a challenge, not just for Jesus, but for us. Where do our allegiances truly lie? How do we faithfully live in the world of empire? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar? Isn't simply a question of economics or politics. Jesus' answer makes it clear that we have responsibilities to both as citizens and followers of Christ. We have duties to both church and state. But paying taxes to Caesar does not give Caesar a mandate. Civil authority is itself under the authority of God. The real question for us is not whether we should pay taxes, but what we should expect and demand from a government supported by our tax dollars. And what should we do when the actions of our government and the teachings of our faith are in conflict? There aren't easy answers, and we don't all arrive at the same ones. We need them all. But these are questions for all of us to wrestle with every day, and especially as we go to the polls. When Jesus asked those questioning him to show him a coin, they brought him a denarius, a silver Roman coin that was imprinted with the image of the emperor. The image indicated that the coin belonged to Caesar. Taxes belong to Caesar. But you and I are created and imprinted with the image of God. And it is to God that we belong. So when people look at you and me, what image do they see? Do they see to whom we belong? Do they see the imprints of empire, of business with the world, in what we look like, what we wear, in our accumulation and consumption, our ambitions and pursuits, in the company we keep? Or do they see the imprint of Christ, of God's love and justice and mercy and grace for all embodied in us?